So again, when things are looked at, it's positive.
Yeah.
And, you know, as long as they're looking at them, I think that's good. I feel much more comfortable with that.
Good. Jim, you want to direct us anymore?
Good.
Okay.
Financial statement highlights for the month of March. The March statements represent the end of the fiscal year, so there are a couple of interesting changes that take place for the end of the fiscal year, where there's adjustments required, so on and so forth. I want to point those out, so that when you're looking at the numbers in more detail, you'll understand where I'm coming from. First one I'd like to highlight is the industrial park. We bill for rental income a month in advance. And the way our accounting system handles it is, what it looks like is that
Records the income
we
that
get
day.
2 months of income in April, and we have no income in March. Because we bill for April rentals in the month of March. And it goes into the system, and as preparation for the audit comes about, we reverse it. And then turn around and book it in April. And it's a goofy nuance, so if you look at the revenue in the industrial park in March, it shows almost nothing. And then in April, you'll see almost 2 months worth.
So the current month numbers on this statement are not significant in terms of rentals,
Right,
but the year-to-date numbers are.
right.
They're sound.
And the other major adjustment that happens is a result of our annual actuarial reports with our pension and various retiree liabilities that we have. It tends to promote big adjustments, either negative or positive. This year, the adjustments are the liability has gone down. So you'll see a reduction in retirement expense flowing through the income statements, and it's a pretty large number.
It is.
So-
I was surprised at that, and this is just the nature of the system? I mean, I'm surprised it's so big.
When I was looking at the net pension liability, one number that stuck out to me was the investment income on our investments during the last state fiscal year.
Yes.
Was up significantly, which, what should happen is it should go against some of our pension payments that we have to make to the state, because the state made so much money off the overall pension investment. It's one of the biggest pension systems in the country.
Yeah.
So we still pay in the same amount, but that's the one number that stuck out to me as being a major difference, was the income generated. And I think it's a prorated share of our income generated on our retirement funds.
I think that's something that, I know, I see the number, I agree with it, but I wanna get a lot more comfortable with it.
Doesn't mean John or I are gonna get any more retirement
No,
income,
no.
but it means we spend less in the future, in theory, so.
I am having trouble understanding.
Which is
hard to believe. Because I've tracked retirement charges to the town of Morristown, and those are always at a rate that's given at the beginning of the year, or, you know, it's not at the beginning of a calendar year. The rates come out sometime in the fall for the subsequent year.
Usually August or September.
Now, those numbers are volatile in the sense that one year it might be 1%, and the next year it might be double that if the market was bad. And when the market's been really strong, we went a couple of years when we didn't have to make a payment because the income had covered the
Exceeded the
increase in
pension liability.
liability. And so this sounds like a different billing system that the authority is
So I
on.
think some of that changed
Yeah, could be,
when the stock market crashed in 2008 or 2009.
yeah.
Because they changed the formulas to try to make some of that
Well,
up.
this would make sense, I
And
mean,
then
and
It
from
hit
2000.
the hospital in Messina right in the choppers. You know, they had like a 4,500% increase in
Yes.
the course of a couple of years.
And it's
And-
rather shocking that the organization's got a history that, you know, they base their,
So,
Yeah, back in 2004, that time period, the city wasn't making any contributions, and nor were employees.
yeah,
They weren't required to because they were doing so well, and then when the stock market dived,
that's exactly the period that I'm familiar with,
then
yeah.
they had to get it back from the municipalities. And I think they have, and then some, but
And then 2015 or 16, the town got a retroactive bill for a series of, well, apparently they were audited at that point to see if they had properly classified.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Uh,
it is
you know.
volatile,
yeah,
and I think we're going into the audit with the right numbers.
mhm,
So I've asked Kenton to help me out with a couple of the numbers that I don't yet quite understand.
sure,
For several years, I've basically left the actuarial reports for the auditors to
Mhm.
deal with.
great.
So there's always an adjustment for retirement
Mhm.
in my hospital career.
On this one, though, in the opening and the closing meeting, the finance audit, I would like the OPEB and net pension to be a specific item on there, so that way we get the auditor's discussion on it, we have the benefit of it, and that way what we think is the case is
Mhm.
proven to be the case. So I just,
That
so I'm
sounds
saying,
excellent.
always leery,
Yes.
you know, when you're looking to get horse in the mouth, you wanna make sure that, you know, it's a horse and not a tiger.
Yep, very good.
And the other changes for the March financial statements, there's always a 1-month period of time when Faria and I close the books on the 26th of April,
Mhm.
and the beginning of the audit period, or the 20th of May, when the auditors are physically here, where we look for subsequent events.
Yep.
So we get a material, large invoice in for January of 2019 that nobody knew was there, so we didn't book an accrual. But that's really to let the finance committee and the board know that there's always a potential for subsequent events that will adjust financials one way or the other.
Mhm.
So,
Very good.
and I do think, as far as changing the accounting reporting, I think Faria has mastered the ability to close the general ledger and produce an April financial statement, like right away, instead of having to wait until the auditors are done, and we had to wait until we closed the Sage system. I think we figured out a way to close it, and then be able to continue to do the financial statements timely.
Mhm. Good.
And that's no small, while you're getting your voice back, that's no small undertaking. I'll give an example, I've been here 13 years, this is the first time I've ever seen a March report before, you know, the end of June, July timeframe. So kudos on job well done, getting that
Yes.
system working the way it should work.
Mhm.
I called the Sage software company. I just want to make sure before I implement close out, and then we find out we are in trouble. So I called them and said, we are good enough, if we just follow some procedure for that.
That's
So,
excellent.
and we'd like to try that, so
Yeah.
hopefully it's working.
Good job.
Good.
So with respect to the income statements, you'll see a lot of explanation of where we ended up 2018-19 versus 2017-18
Mhm.
for most of the categories. You've heard me say pretty consistently over the last few months, the bridge traffic has trended in the wrong direction
Yep.
for a couple of months. So I think we ended up below budget in revenue projections. I don't think we were overly optimistic, but we ended up under budget in the revenues, and I think having the delay in the bridge toll increase approval was a major factor in those numbers not shoring up. And the good news is now we've got the bridge toll increase, and we're already seeing the daily impact of that.
Mhm.
It's not gonna be a significant windfall, but it's gonna help $55,000 a month, help us to pay some of these bills
Mhm.
more timely. So, on the airport side, we saw a 12% improvement, and that's just taking the bottom line last year compared to the bottom line of this year on a cash basis. We still have significant losses with the airport, but we showed that 12% was about $260,000, which was a combination of revenue growth, sorry, and expense cuts. We cut a couple of large contracts and replenished that with our own internal staff, but the savings was pretty pronounced. And in the Port of Augsburg, we saw the impact of the difference between not having a wind turbine project and having a wind turbine project had an impact of about $1.5 million on our revenues and expenses, even a little more than that. Again, I apologize. I can feel it when my
Yep,
throat's gonna go on me. So,
understood.
the only thing with the Port of Augsburg, if you recall, is we were a little bit optimistic on the grain bin opening and the
Mhm.
revenues we'd see from that. And then in the last fiscal year, we only had 2 salt ships. I think the mine inventories were low, and I think we suffered right at the end of the winter time, but we usually see 4,
Mhm.
and this year we saw 2. And one was by mistake, so we didn't have to, and it happened fairly early in the year, so hopefully we'll see those salt ships return to a normal position.
Mhm.
So, the only thing I highlighted on the border station was, again, we have the finalized 20-year lease term being presented. There will be a shift. This is going to allow us to, for lack of a better term, purge the border station finances
Mhm.
into OBPAs. There'll be some paperwork and some approvals required by the IRS,
Mhm.
and some effort on the part of the attorneys, so that'll be,
Be much cleaner when it's all done.
that'll be something. So we have one general ledger, we have one accounting system. There's not a lot of activity in the border station side. We book depreciation, we book the rental income, and then we accrue a whole bunch of cost over there.
Mhm.
So that'll be a good thing. And the one thing we didn't mention that I did see in the lease agreement is every 5th year, we get a larger increment of rental increases. No, it's not typically as the previous one was done, where we got a CPI index improvement every year.
Now, on the last one, there was no rental, well, there was rent that was paying for the bonds. The CPI increase was for the operating income that we get to provide services to them. This lease has an operating increase for the operating services, and it has an increase in the rent every 5 years, 5%.
And there are no surprises in the last couple of years of the agreement, which is one major difference from
Not yet.
the last one.
Unless someone does an amendment.
No hidden surprises in there. So,
So, turning over to the balance sheet, you can see we ended up in 2018, 19. I put the wrong date in there. I apologize for that. Should be March 2019 on the footer. That was Jim's mix-up. But anyway, cash improved by $166,000 from last year's audited statement. We did see tremendous improvement, mainly in the timing of the grant receivables. At the end of 2019, at the end of March, we had only 2 grant vouchers that we were expecting, totaling less than $300,000. So we have received one of them, and we're still waiting for $111,000. The due from other funds, which is a fairly large number, is going to go away in the intercorporate balance sheet. It's the amount we show is owed to the border station. And then, so on the, it shows up as a liability on the, I keep wanting to say the hospital books, but the OBPA books, and a receivable on the border station books. So I don't see any other numbers really to point out. If you look at accounts payable, it ended up, the beginning of the year was $1,474,000, and the end of the year is $1,364,000. That's pretty much a reflection of a break-even income statement. So we showed a little bit of improvement. What has improved in that process is the aging. So the aging in that $1,474,000 was on the older side, much higher percentages, out 90 to 120 days plus. This year we've got that under better control with the current reports. You can see those totals on the reports that I send to the board members every 15 days. How much is in the 120-day plus column and how much is in the 0 to 30 column. One of the other adjustments is we are now reporting the current portion of long-term debt and separating that out, placing it up under current liabilities. That was an accounting thing that, for whatever reason, the OBPA has not done historically.